Legislation is currently up for vote in the Senate that would address foreign anti-competitive practices. The Competes Act aims to provide investments for America's workforce development, bolstering our competitive edge with China. Well, Kip Eideberg with the Association of Equipment Manufacturing is joining us right here in studio now for an industry update. And Kip, first of all, thanks for taking the time. We appreciate having you here in studio with us today.
Thanks for having me, Janet.
Absolutely.
It's always great to be in Nashville.
Absolutely. Now, give us kind of an overview of this legislation, what it aims to accomplish.
Absolutely. Well, let me put into context for you. Equipment manufacturers and farmers, for that matter as well, continue to face fairly significant headwinds right now. That includes continuous supply chain challenges, rising costs, both input and labor, and a regulatory environment that is not competitive enough. And so we have been urging Congress, Republicans and Democrats alike, as well as the White House, to do something about that. And they can deliver an important win for our industry by passing the Bipartisan Innovation Act, what used to be called USICA, before then the Endless Frontier Act.
Now, I understand it's also a companion bill to the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, both containing measures, CHIPS for America. Explain what we have here.
Yeah, and I think there's an old saying that probably applies here, right? There is no silver bullet, but there might be some silver buckshot. And what this bill will do for our industry is threefold. Number one, it will help spur American manufacturing. That's the CHIPS Act. That's a significant chunk of change to help manufacture more semiconductors in the United States, obviously something that our industry is heavily dependent on. Number two, it will also invest in American research and development. And number three, it will make our supply chains more resilient, which is something that we've seen as we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic continues to be an issue for us.
So where do we stand with both of these sets of legislation, and what kind of hurdles are we looking at?
Well, right now, Congress, the Senate and the House are going into a conference committee trying to reconcile the differences between the Competes Act, which is what the House passed, and USICA, which is what the Senate passed. Hopefully, they'll come out with a compromise that will be appealing to both Democrats and Republicans. Obviously, the White House is leaning in heavily as well. And what we're doing as an industry is that we're reminding them that let's make sure that the perfect is not the enemy of the good here, right? Far too often that happens to be the case in Washington. We need them to set aside their differences, put policy ahead of politics, and get this bill passed to deliver a win for our industry, as well as farmers and ranchers.
Do you feel like there is enough support to make it happen, or are we still trying to work the hallways?
We're working the hallways. It's going to be tight, much like the infrastructure bill. Unfortunately, this tends to become a partisan affair, but we're confident. I think there'll be enough Republicans there at the end of the day to do the right thing and get this bill passed and to the president's desk.
Now, of course, we're talking ag equipment manufacturing, but of course, throughout the pandemic, we've been hearing about the chips, and that's why we have so many vehicles sitting out waiting to actually fill the parking lots or car lots. Do you have the support of the motor vehicle industry as well? We
do, absolutely. They're right there with us on this. And let me tell you, I was just in Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago at a large equipment manufacturing facility. There must have been 75 tractors and combines sitting outside that factory waiting for one component. And chips obviously is a big issue, but it's not just chips. It's filters, wiring harnesses, windshields in some cases. And we've got to figure out a way to shore up our supply chain so we can continue to meet the strong demand for equipment that is out there.
What kind of timeline are we looking at if things could actually happen and maybe come to fruition?
Well, we're optimistic that it will get done before the August recess, but hopefully if all of us can pull together and Congress can do their job, maybe in the next couple of months.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sitting down with us. We're going to continue our conversation with Kip here in our next half hour. Also, AEM Senior Vice President of Government and Industry Relations, Kip Eideberg, sitting down with us here in studio. And of course, as I mentioned, stay tuned. He'll sit back down with Kip in our next half hour to learn how supply chain issues are impacting the ag equipment sector.